Have you ever stopped to wonder why you feel like there's something missing, like you've only been living with a tiny fraction of who you really are? From the moment you took your first breath in this world, everything around you started shaping your reality. You were told what to believe, what to fear, and what to laugh off as nonsense. The rules were laid out, the system made clear, and questioning too much, that was quietly discouraged. But what if the biggest limitation of all wasn't real to begin with? What if the boundaries you've accepted as normal were never actually yours, but were placed there to keep you from accessing something extraordinary? Something ancient civilizations understood deeply, something modern science is just barely starting to catch up to. In ancient Egypt, there was a figure named Thoth. To the Greeks, he was Hermes Trismegistus, Hermes the thrice great. But Thoth wasn't just some distant god from dusty myths. He was the embodiment of knowledge, of mastery, of truth. He was considered the patron of writing, mathematics, time, and perhaps most dangerously of the inner workings of the human mind. Thoth represented a type of knowledge so powerful, so transformative, that over time it had to be buried, not because it was false, but because it was dangerous to those who seek control. Long before the scientific method, long before religious institutions set their dogmas in stone, there existed a stream of knowledge that threatened all centralized authority. It didn't come from ivory towers or underground labs. It came from sacred temples, whispered through initiations passed on by those who had awakened their consciousness. At the core of these teachings was one radical idea, that your mind is not just a passive witness to the world. It's an active creator of it, that you're not trapped inside time, you can actually move beyond it. That your consciousness doesn't reside in your brain, but is plugged into a vast universal field of intelligence that stretches across space and time. The emerald tablets, which are attributed to Thoth, speak of techniques that go far beyond simple meditation or spiritual poetry. They're blueprints, methods, tools designed to unlock the dormant capacities inside you, the ones you were never taught to access, the ones that threaten systems built on your obedience. You see, when a person discovers their own mental sovereignty, when they remember that their thoughts shape their reality, they become ungovernable. They stop reacting to fear. They stop responding to manipulation. They become impossible to predict and harder to control. That's why this knowledge had to be hidden, not erased, but obscured, wrapped in myths, labeled as fantasy, buried under centuries of disinformation. The further society advanced in technology, the more it regressed in spiritual depth. As empires grew and science took the throne, Thoth's teachings were quietly locked away, guarded only by mystery schools, secret orders, and esoteric texts. The public. We were fed fairy tales, stories of pyramids, rituals, and gods with animal heads. Interesting, sure, but never dangerous, never powerful. Because if they could get you to believe that your mind is just a byproduct of chemical reactions, that your thoughts are random and meaningless, that psychic abilities and intuitive insights are nothing more than wishful thinking or mental illness, then they've already won. You'll never seek the truth, you'll mock those who do, and most importantly, you'll police your own mind. That's the genius of it. No need for force, no need for censorship. People will shut themselves down. They'll laugh off their own experiences. They'll stick to the script even if it means denying the deepest parts of their being. But the truth didn't die. It just went underground. A select few kept the flame alive. They knew that reality isn't fixed, that the mind, when trained properly, can access realms and information far beyond the senses, and to know this isn't fantasy, this isn't woo, this is a level of science so advanced, so ancient, it makes today's materialist worldview look like child's play. Even now, in our hyper-rational world, cracks in the illusion are showing. From near-death experiences to military remote viewing programs, from quantum entanglement to whistleblower revelations about consciousness research, something big is surfacing, and it all points back to one thing. You are far more powerful than you've been led to believe. The tragedy you were trained to forget. From the very start, everything you were taught was designed to keep your awareness within narrow boundaries. Your schooling wasn't about expanding consciousness, it was about memorizing pre-approved facts, regurgitating information, staying within the lines. Were you ever encouraged to explore the idea that your mind could shape reality, that your thoughts could reach across time and space, that consciousness might exist beyond the body? No, you were told to focus on test scores, on productivity, on provable, repeatable data. And so an entire society emerged, one that not only dismisses expanded perception, but actively defends its own blindness. People cling to their limitations because they believe they're facts. And the media that just seals the deal, movies, shows, even cartoons, all reinforce the same message. The hero restores order. The villain questions it. Power that doesn't come from external authority, that's evil, that's unstable, that's dangerous. Over time, this story shapes your worldview. You begin to associate comfort with conformity. And any urge to step outside the box, to explore forbidden knowledge, to trust your inner sense of truth, feels risky, like something you should be ashamed of. Science, for all its value, hasn't helped much here either. For decades, mainstream science has guarded its own dogmas as tightly as any church. The dominant materialist view insists consciousness is just neurons firing. Anything beyond that pseudoscience, fringe, not worth funding, not worth discussing. And yet, behind closed doors, researchers have probed the very things they publicly dismiss: classified programs, intelligence agencies, black budget research. They've been exploring the mind's hidden capabilities for decades. Why? Because they know it works. They know that if you can access information beyond time and space through thoughts alone, you're tapping into something revolutionary, something that could flip the game board completely. And yet, here we are, taught to ridicule what our governments investigate, taught to fear our own potential. But here's the truth: once you realize what your mind is actually capable of, there's no going back. You stop seeking validation, you stop reacting to the chaos outside, and you begin to look within, not as a retreat, but as a reclamation. So what happens when you begin to look within? You start noticing things, small things at first. Intuitive nudges that feel oddly specific, flashes of insight that have no logical explanation, moments where time feels different. You brush them off because that's what you were taught to do. But deep down, something in you recognizes the pattern, that recognition. That's the first crack in the wall. Because here's the thing: they didn't destroy the tools, they just made sure you never learned how to use them. The mechanisms for awakening these inner senses are still within you. Always have been. The education system ignored them. The media drowned them out. The culture laughed at them, but they're there. They've been waiting. The ancient initiates of Egypt weren't playing with superstition. They were working with tools, precise, repeatable, transformative tools, techniques based on vibrational frequency, mental projection, symbolic activation, conscious attunement. They understood that thought is energy, that focus is a weapon, that the mind, when aligned properly, can not only perceive, but create. And the most unsettling part: this isn't mythology, it's science. Or rather, it's a science that modern institutions are just beginning to rediscover while still pretending it's all new. You've probably heard phrases like thoughts become things or visualize your future, but let's go deeper than self-help slogans. In the mystery schools, visualization wasn't just daydreaming, it was ritual, a training exercise, a way to send specific frequencies into the field of reality. The practitioner would craft a vivid mental image, infuse it with emotion, and hold it with unwavering focus. Not once, not casually, daily, repeatedly, until resonance was achieved. And with enough resonance, access opened. Access to what? To information, to events, to knowledge not available through the five senses. This is where psychic abilities begin, not in superstition, but in disciplined mental attunement. Symbols were another critical part of this training, not just decorative art, but encoded frequencies, sacred geometry, hieroglyphs, sigils. These weren't random. They were keys, triggers that opened specific doors in consciousness. The Eye of Horus, the Flower of Life, the ink, all of them carried vibrational data that the subconscious could interpret and respond to. By meditating on these forms, initiates could access altered states, not because the symbol was magic, but because it spoke to a part of the mind that words couldn't reach. Rituals, too, had a very specific purpose. They weren't empty traditions, they were protocols, designed to synchronize the mind, body, and energetic field, the right posture, the right sound frequency, the right breath pattern. All of it worked to tune the human instrument. Once in tune, perception expanded. That's why chanting and sound played such a big role. Certain tones, like solfeggio frequencies, weren't just beautiful, they were mathematical. Vibrational tools used to entrain the brain into theta or delta states. And in those states, you could feel more, sense more, know more. That's when things like remote viewing, telepathy, and precognition stopped being concepts and started becoming experiences. In these traditions, time wasn't seen as linear, it was layered, like a spiraling field of probability that could be navigated with the right awareness. By tuning into a certain frequency, you could catch glimpses of what was, what is, and what could be. And it wasn't just theory. Governments in recent decades have conducted their own experiments, classified programs into remote viewing, mental influence, and consciousness expansion. They tried to replicate what the ancients had already mapped out, and while they've discovered a lot, they've kept it hidden, not to protect you, but to maintain their advantage, because here's the truth that no one tells you. This power isn't rare. It's just suppressed, not suppressed by magic or force, but by distraction, by noise, by the constant pull of shallow focus and empty gratification. You weren't taught to develop your mind. You were taught to overstimulate it, to scatter it across 1,000 inputs, to never let it settle into stillness long enough to hear what it's truly capable of. But that capacity, it's still there. You felt it, that strange moment of deja vu, that gut instinct that turned out to be right, that dream that mirrored reality a little too closely. Those aren't glitches. They're fragments of a deeper truth breaking through the surface. And once you notice them, you can't unsee them. You realize that your consciousness was never meant to be trapped in a narrow slice of reality. You begin to see how modern life is designed to keep you there. Social media, constant alerts, artificial lighting, fear-driven news. It's not random. It's programming. It keeps your brain in a reactive state. And when you're reactive, you're not receptive. The less stillness in your life, the less access you have to the higher frequencies. That's the quiet war being waged every day, not on your body, on your attention. But the moment you choose stillness, everything starts to change. When you turn down the volume of the world, the signal gets clearer. You begin to hear your own intuition. You start noticing synchronicities, patterns in reality that feel deliberate. You feel more connected, more present, more awake. And that's not your imagination. That's resonance. You're starting to match your inner state with a broader field of intelligence. One that doesn't speak in words, but in alignment, in flow, in clarity. That's the beginning of awakening, not the flashy kind, the real kind, the kind that builds quietly, moment by moment, practice by practice. Meditation becomes more than relaxation. It is a gateway, a training ground. In deep states, your brain begins to shift. The boundaries between conscious and subconscious begin to blur, and what enters, information, insights, impressions you couldn't access before, visualization becomes more than fantasy. It becomes a tool. When paired with emotion, when practiced with discipline, it changes your frequency, and your frequency changes your experience. But here's the hard truth. None of this works if you keep feeding your mind with low frequency input. Fear-based news, violent entertainment, comparison-driven social media, all of it pulls you back into the narrow bandwidth. You can't soar if you're weighed down by garbage. And this isn't about being a purist. It's about being intentional, about creating space for your deeper faculties to reawaken, about surrounding yourself with others who are on the same path, because resonance is amplified in community. The system thrives on isolation. But connection, real, authentic, heart-centered connection, that's where the field starts to shift. That's when things begin to ripple out. Conversations change, new questions emerge, old beliefs fall away, and you begin to trust something that no institution can give you, your own knowing. That's where power lives. And still, it's not in rebellion, it's not in violence, it's in stillness, in clarity, in sovereignty of thought. Because when you begin to think for yourself, not reactively, but intuitively, you become untouchable. You start seeing through the noise. You stop playing the game. And without even trying, you start to wake others up too, because your vibration speaks louder than your words ever could. What happens when more and more people begin to wake up, not in a superficial, trendy way, but in a real, grounded, irreversible way? Everything changes. When you see the system, this massive, complex machine of authority, media, education, economics, it's only stable when people remain asleep, when they stay divided, distracted, doubting themselves. It doesn't need chains to control you. It only needs you to question your own power. But when even one person breaks free, the ripple begins. And when thousands do it, millions, the system begins to bend, not because people are rioting in the streets, but because they're stepping out of the invisible framework entirely. They're not playing by the old rules anymore. They're not looking outside themselves for validation. They're no longer afraid to question what they were told. They're not buying into every fear narrative that flashes across the screen. They've stopped feeding the machine with their attention, their belief, and most importantly, their energy. This is how real transformation happens. It's not loud, it's not flashy, it's subtle but unstoppable. Because once you reclaim your mind, your attention, your awareness, your creative focus, no one can take it from you. You've unplugged from the control grid. And as more people do this, a tipping point approaches. The collective field begins to shift, and reality itself starts to reflect that. This isn't abstract, it's observable. You're already seeing signs of it, people questioning mainstream narratives, more openly rejecting systems that no longer serve them, seeking out alternative knowledge, not because it's trendy, but because it resonates. Conversations are evolving, curiosity is returning, awareness is spreading, and the powers that be, they're panicking. Every headline designed to provoke fear, every story meant to divide, every distraction thrown at you, it's all part of a last-ditch effort to keep you asleep, to pull your focus outward so you never look inward, because that's where the threat really lies. You, a mind that thinks freely, a person who trusts their inner knowing, someone who no longer asks for permission to see the truth. You are the system's biggest problem, not because you're violent, but because you're no longer compliant. And when enough people reclaim that inner sovereignty, the old structures start to collapse, not in chaos, but in quiet irrelevance. They just stop working. People stop buying, stop believing, stop obeying out of fear. The world begins to reorganize itself around new values, clarity, connection, integrity, and truth. That's the revolution, one of consciousness, not conflict. It's already underway. And the ancient teachings, the ones you were told to ignore, the ones hidden in symbols and coded in myth, they've been waiting for this moment, not to be worshipped, not to be idolized, but to be remembered, to be lived, to be activated. Thoth's wisdom was never about creating followers. It was about creating initiates, people ready to step beyond illusion and reclaim their mind as the sacred instrument it was always meant to be. Because here's the final truth: nothing was ever hidden from you by distance. It was hidden by distraction. You were taught to chase achievements, approval, possessions, all while the real treasure sat within you untouched. You were trained to view your own intuition with suspicion, your own dreams as fantasy, your inner voice as unreliable, and it worked for a while, but not anymore. The cracks are showing. The old paradigm is crumbling. And now the question is no longer, is this real? The question is, are you ready? Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you feel the pull, the resonance, the memory of something deeper calling you, you'll know. You've already crossed the threshold. You don't need a temple. You don't need permission. You just need stillness, discipline, and the courage to trust what's been inside you all along. Awakening is not a one-time event. It's not a finish line. It's a process, a shedding, a remembering. Every time you choose presence over distraction, you strengthen it. Every time you trust your intuitive nudge instead of doubting it, you sharpen it. Every time you question a belief that was handed to you, you loosen another chain. And yes, it can be disorienting, unsettling, even lonely at times. But that's only because you're stepping out of the hive and into your own authenticity. And that's where everything begins. The teachings of Thoth, the real ones, weren't about worshiping some distant god. They were about activating the godlike potential within you. They were practical, precise, and powerful systems for aligning your mind with universal law, with the rhythm of creation itself. Because when your thoughts are clear, your emotions coherent, and your consciousness tuned, you become a participant in reality, not a victim of it. You influence the field. You draw in synchronicities. You receive insights from a source that logic can't explain, and you start to live in alignment with a deeper current one that has always been guiding you, even through the noise. That's not fantasy, that's resonance, and it's available to anyone who chooses it. So are you ready to choose it? Because here's the final paradox. You've been waiting, your whole life for something, but that something has actually been waiting for you. The moment you say yes, not to a belief, but to your own awareness, everything begins to unfold. The symbols make sense, the patterns reveal themselves, the truth stops being something you seek and becomes something you recognize. This is the path of the initiate, the path of remembrance, and it begins not with complex rituals or rare initiations, but with a single shift in attention from out there to in here, from noise to stillness, from fear to frequency. You didn't stumble on this video by accident. You're here because you're ready. And if that resonates with you, if you feel that spark, then follow it. Explore further. Go deeper. The Insights Academy was built for exactly this. For those who feel the pull but don't know where to begin. For those who know there's more but haven't had a space to uncover it. Some truths simply can't be spoken in the open anymore, but we share them there in full. And for a limited time, yes, you'll get a free copy of the Kabbalion when you subscribe. The link is below. Just don't wait for a perfect moment. Ready isn't a state, it's a choice. If this message hit you somewhere deeper than your mind, if it stirred something ancient inside, let us know in the comments. And remember, the most dangerous thing to any system of control is a mind that has awakened.